If I had to do my Spanish oral again, these are the things that I would and would not do. The first mistake that you should avoid doing is memorizing a massive list of vocab. Instead, just concentrating on memorizing a list of words that you will use in your everyday talking. So if you're not sure which words to memorize, there's two ways that you can figure this out. Number one, use articles, or you can think about how you would usually talk to your friends when you're describing something. So for instance, say you look at an article that's talking about globalization. Read through that article and pick out the words that seem to keep on coming up again and again. This would include transitions, adjectives, and commonly used verbs. Use this article to create a list of words that you think you would likely use during your oral. Alternatively, what you could also do is just use a stock image from Google and think about how you would describe what's happening in the image to your teacher during your oral. Think about how you would talk about this in English first, and then look at the words that you wouldn't know how to say in whatever language your oral is going to be. I would write down these words and I would plug them onto Google Translate and generate a list of words in Spanish that I would likely need to use during my oral. The second mistake you should avoid doing is focusing solely on vocabulary. Your oral exam is more than just using big words and fancy words that might impress your teacher. Your teacher will really be impressed when you use good idioms and transitions. So also make sure that you spend a good chunk of time learning idioms that you can commonly use during your oral. When I was preparing for my Spanish oral, what I actually did is I scripted out sentence starters that already incorporated the use of idioms. This ensured that I had a general template of what to say during my oral, and I also included these idioms that would get me marks for the rubric. In addition to including idioms in your scripted sentence templates, also include complex verb tenses that you can use on the fly during your oral. This includes verb tenses such as subjunctive or imperfect, and try to figure out how you can incorporate these different verb tenses during your oral so that you're not always just talking in present tense or past tense. The third mistake that you should avoid doing is ignoring the rubric. Make sure that you know thy enemy. Reading through the rubric will give you a sense of direction as to what to actually prepare for during your oral, and it will just make the process feel a lot less scary. Study the rubric to understand where you can score marks. Are there a specific number of idioms that you should include? How about transitions? And what are the deductions for if you make a mistake? How about if you go over time? These are all factors that you should consider when you're preparing for your oral to make sure that you're practicing effectively and you're studying in the right direction. This brings me to my next point about how to actually prepare for that oral exam. Make sure that you try a few different methods to practice your Spanish oral. Don't simply just sit down and try to memorize that list of idioms or vocab. That's not going to get you that far. What you should actually do is practice speaking them out loud, or even writing and scripting an oral for a given stock image. Actually use your voice instead of just rereading your notes. To improve your confidence, practice speaking in front of a mirror and just pretend that you're talking to a friend. Make sure that you also use a timer when you're practicing for your oral so that you know how long you're speaking, and that way you'll get a general feel of what it's like to speak for 2 to 3 minutes for your oral. Record your voice and listen to that to further memorize your sentence stems. It's also helpful to record your voice because that way you can tell if you're pronouncing the words properly and to see if you're clearly enunciating the words. Finally, my last step is to start thinking in that language. For example, when I was preparing for my Spanish oral, I would take an extra moment to consider how I could say and express my thought in Spanish. When I'm talking to my friend and I want to say, I'm heading home after school, but I need to pick up groceries from the grocery store on the way home. How would I say this in Spanish? How would I use the different tenses? How could I incorporate an extra idiom? These are all thoughts that can be running through your mind during your season of preparing for your oral, and it helps you pick out words that you wouldn't know how to say but commonly use in your native language. And that will give you a direction as to which words you should study. I hope you found this video helpful, and check out my video here on how I scored a 7 on my IB Spanish oral. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.